Hi, thanks for clicking on the video. This is a really fun interview I did with JSUNG. At the time, he was a stand-in for Soniqs, recently signed as their fifth player. It's not too long, just a little background on the man, the myth, the legend himself, an answer to the question, who is JSUNG? Sorry for the delay in getting this out there, but I hope you guys enjoy. I got a gameplay in the background of Soniqs versus Most Prolific on Icebox. This is a match I casted the first time I really took note of JSUNG was in this series. I hope you guys enjoy. I apologize for the low quality. I had to kind of rip the VOD straight from Twitch and do a bunch of stuff just to kind of get it to work in Premiere. So if you enjoy the video, follow me on Twitter at RoamCasts. Not sure how consistently I'll be posting stuff like this, but if you enjoy, let me know. Thanks. Make sure you guys also give JSUNG a follow on Twitter at JSUNGV1. So I have with me JSUNG, stand in for Soniqs. And I'm gonna just start with I think the question that everyone wants to know, which is, who is JSUNG?
Who is JSUNG? Just Jason Sung. That's my name.
Just Jason Sung. Well,
Yep.
you first came onto my radar when I was casting Sonics versus Most Prolific in the Knights Monthly in September. People who are really tapped in have probably been watching. You've been competing, at least according to VLR, since October of last year. So you're not new to the scene necessarily. But why don't you give people a little bit of a background of just kind of who you are, generally out of game, and a little bit about your kind of background so far in Valorant competing.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I just zoned out for a second.
No, you're all good. Yeah, just kind of start off with who you are. Are you like a high school student? Are you in college? Are you out on your own? And then kind of walk us through a little bit of your the general timeline of your professional career.
Sure. Uh, I would say I started off. I did go into college in about 2019 or 2018, towards the end of 2018, and I really went for about one semester, and I kind of figured that it wasn't the right place for me since I don't really know exactly what I wanted to major in, but I really did enjoy competing at the time. And I played a little bit of Counter Strike before I hop shipped to Valorant, but I also ended up taking a break from Counter Strike and just working. So I worked a lot of retail. Uh, I worked at some different clothing stores, and one of them being Gucci. We won't go too much into detail about that. Maybe
No
in the
shit.
future.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but yeah, around. Well, Gucci was like the last job that I was working
Okay.
before I jumped over to Valorant because of the whole like coronavirus and like the whole outbreak and everything. We started work at home a little bit, and coincidentally, like the time the Valorant beta came out, and I was actually having a bit of fun playing it because I was playing again with a few friends from Counter Strike and just like a bunch of people. We're starting to like pick back the game up a little bit, and like maybe this is the next game, like who knows. And I ended up playing it for a bit, and then I felt like the fire inside of me just like kind of reignited my passion to compete again. And I was like, do I want to do it? I played some tournaments early on under a different alias. It was a Biotic Rain.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Yeah, tell us a little bit
So,
about Biotic Rain.
all right, so Biotic Rain was a Counter Strike player, just like yeah. I played some ESEA, one from like open to main, and then the highest league I played was like advanced at the time. And when I jumped over to Valorant, I started off as like a Sentinel player. Like I played a bit of Cypher. That was terrible. We'll never talk about those days again. But
Okay.
shortly after, I jumped over to like Sova, and for actually most of my Valorant career, I've actually been playing Sova up until around. I think the last tournament I played Sova for the team that I played before Carpe Noctem, headshot percentage or Elevate, like those guys. I think it was in April, and I was playing like, and yeah, that would be the last tournament uh, I've played Sova in since this interview. And then that's when I think I started to have this passion more towards playing like a flex duelist role. I wanted to be more or less like a person that specialized in playing like flash agents. Partially because I felt like it enabled my aim a bit better since I'm kind of like a take your time headshot type of player.
That's
So I
cool. So,
prefer, yeah.
do you mind if I ask, like, how does that process go about when you leave headshot percentage? Are you then just kind of working on playing those supportive flash agents, and then also
Um,
actively pursuing those types of roles in your next team? Or like, what does that process look like of trying to switch what you've been playing and trying to get into a new role while you're also switching teams?
so I think the whole process is actually a bit difficult, I would say, because like I'd imagine if you've built your name like, well, I guess up to that point you've built your name on like quote unquote like, oh, like this guy's really good at Sova, oh this guy's really good at like flexing smokes, right? And then like all of a sudden it's like this guy's playing duelist, like it's really random, like to be honest, like. And it's like it's kind of like those things where like people are just like, oh, he just wants to play duelist, he just wants to do that. And like I kind of find it funny because like a lot of the pro players that you see like get picked up, they start off as a duelist and then they go into like a smokes role or like a sentinel or like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me it kind of like ended up being like like the opposite. Like I
Right.
started off as like the supportive role and then went into like the flashier duelist flex duelist role.
So yeah, so tell me a little bit about your transition then after headshot percentage and joining Carpe Noctem.
So with Carpe Noctem, a lot of the players on there were all like my former teammates that I've played with. So with Polly and Trolls, I played with them on Team Rolled, which was like the team that we played back in beta. And then with Zid, I played with Zid later bot, which was like the next team that I would play on after Rolled like kind of died.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys all do know me, and I felt like I told them that I felt like I could play like this duelist role because I know Polly plays Sova, so we ended up going with that, and they do know that like I have like some pretty like sharp aim, so they felt like it would be a good position for me because I think as a duelist you're more so being like a playmaker. You're someone that like excels in like well depending on the playstyle, but for me like I enjoy like opening up rounds and like potentially like being more or less like in the front more so than like maybe like lurking or like doing things in the back and supporting.
Yeah. So tell me about your time with Carpe Noctem then, because up until that point, that's to a certain degree probably like the most prominent team that you had been on, right?
Um, yeah, I think well if we're speaking like on an individual level, yeah, like no other team that I've played on, I felt like I've had as much impact as I will ever have like on Carpe Noctem. And maybe it is like a role thing where like maybe just putting me on that role just allowed me to like take over the game a bit more, feel out the game and really like play to my strengths. And yeah, I mean, I felt like Carpe Noctem was just like a squad that we built together with like some friends that are like fairly competent at the game,
Mm-hmm.
and we could all like kind of evolve together like as a team. And a lot of like the planning on Carpe Noctem, like the leadership and everything, like I had a big part to play in it because like we all know each other pretty well, so it's like it's pretty easy to just like suggest ideas and like try different things. And a lot of the stuff that I adapted into Carpe Noctem was a lot of like the Vision Strikers stuff from Korea.
Dope. That's cool.
And yeah.
So as far as these kind of teams that you were a part of before you started your stint standing in with Soniqs,
Mhm.
can you tell me a little bit about like what is it like in the kind of the thick of it in the grind? being like a tier 2, tier 3 player, just kind of grinding out these tournaments. Were you still working at this time? Are you just kind of committing as much time as you can outside of your life commitments to the game, or are you and your teammates all just kind of like, no, we're all in since we're locked down? Like, what does that like just functionally look like day to day? Because we see so much on social media of like these videos of the top squads and their boot camping and all this stuff, but these guys are getting paid money. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
what's it like in the pit, in the thick of it? You know?
I think it's definitely rough. It's definitely a luck thing, right? Because it's 5 players on a team. Like not including any coaches or
Mm-hmm.
supporting staff, but 5 players on a team. You have no clue like what the schedule is like for each player. It's gonna be difficult, especially with everyone like kind of like unknown with their schedule and everything. But for the teams that I played prior to Carpe Noctem, like I would say like HSP or Elevate, it was kind of fine because everyone kind of had like a pretty free and clear schedule because we're all like fairly young and
Mm.
we're all like devoted to the game. For me, I ended up leaving work to try to pursue Valorant as a potential career, and I ended up playing the game. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna lie. I'm definitely not not a grinder, so you can definitely tell by my account level. I'm like account level like 30 something. So
No way, man.
I'm a bit on the lower side, but I do put a lot of hours into like working on my aim and stuff in the rain. I take a lot of pride in that, but
So
yeah,
maybe you are a grinder, maybe just not a ranked grinder. Is that fair to say?
yeah. I would spend a lot of time watching like VODs and stuff to help develop strategy and also just work on like my own individual
Interesting.
skill. Like,
And was it like that from the beginning when you jumped in, where you were watching a lot of VODs and spending a lot of time working on your mechanics and not just kind of grinding game experience in ranked or in
yeah,
pugs?
because like for me, I actually watched a lot of streams and I would just take into consideration like how they approach something in a round or like
Interesting.
potential like utility
Like
usage, and
individual
then
player streams?
yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
that, and also tournaments. Like back in like beta when the game first came out, I watched a lot of like Mixwell, and I would see
Mm.
like how he had approached like a round or like a unique way that he could do something like with his abilities or something, and I would just like keep a mental note of it, and then I would just try to apply it to my own game.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. All right, so we've kind of talked all the way up through Carpe Noctem. Can you tell me what the circumstances surrounding you leaving that team was, and kind of how related it was to you standing in for Sonics?
So around the time like so it's actually kind of like back to like the scheduling thing and the timing thing with like the 5 players with Carpe Noctem, like I would say like like everybody's a boomer, like no offense, like but we're all like everyone on Carpe Noctem's like fairly like on the older side, so they all have jobs and stuff
Mm-hmm.
and they all have like obligations, so sometimes like we're not able to play in like every single tournament, especially if they're like Monday at like 1 p.m. or like like 11 a.m. for like PST people. So I didn't have like the luxury of like playing every like every tournament, I guess. But I would play in like as many tournaments as we could. But yeah, towards the end of Carpe Noctem, a few of us went on like vacation. Some people had to go take care of like stuff on their own time, and that's actually around the same time when I started to get like trials. And
Yeah, because you played with
yeah,
Squirrel Squad for a bit this summer, right?
yeah, I did play but that was more or less like it was like a pug team.
Oh, okay, that was
And
more just kind of filling.
yeah,
Yeah, just
just
pucking it
getting a
out.
roster together and
Mm-hmm.
just playing in a pickup event. And then I did trial for a few other teams, and yeah.
That's really cool. So can you share any of the teams that you were trialing with? I don't really know what the standard is with that.
Well, I won't list some of them because, well, I guess I can't really list any of them besides like me standing in for Sonics
Sure,
because
sure.
I
Were
did.
they on like similar grounds as a team as
Um,
Sonics?
not as high ranking on VLR, I will say.
Okay, cool. So that's really interesting. So what is the process of beginning to stand in for Sonics look like? Do you just get a DM from one of the players?
Yeah,
Did you find out how they discovered you by any chance?
that was actually a good question. I actually didn't really know anyone on Sonics at the time, but I did receive a DM from Bob asking about if I was available to like stand in for attorney and just like to keep in touch and everything because I think at the time their fifth was Plix and he was out of town doing some things and yeah they just asked me to stand in for him and that's what led to me.
Right, and so that led to you filling in the Knights monthly in August, right?
Yep. Or the I guess like the first tournament that I stood in for them.
Yeah, yeah. At least according to VLR, that's what it looks like. So did you get an idea of how Bob kind of found your name, or how you ended up being one of the people that they reached out to stand in?
Oh yeah, so that was actually a question that was also revolving in my head. So I ended
I
up
I
asking,
bet, yeah.
and Bob, she ended up telling me that like she was looking through players with like, I think they were looking for. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember like to the full extent, but I think they were looking at some players that had like pretty solid sky stats, and I was like one of the players that had like a pretty standout performance against like better players, I suppose.
You have good sky
And
stats. I can confirm this for the listeners at
yeah,
home.
so they ended
Check
up going
VLR if
with
you want, but he's
the.
got good sky stats. Trust.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much how they ended up finding me out, and then they just shot me like a DM, and then just started to stand in and play with them.
That's unbelievable. Just a quick VLR search, couple filters on there, and that's amazing. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So, what was it like when you kind of first stood in for them? This was obviously a pretty big step up for you. Were there different kind of nerves that went with it, or was it just business as usual? Once you get in the server, you kind of get into a little bit of a flow state.
Um, Honestly, the first time I ever actually stood in for them, it was actually pretty natural to me. It just felt like honestly, that's what kind of surprised me is that I just felt like the way that they were approaching the game, it was like kind of similar to the way that I was approaching the game on Carpe Noctem. So it was really just like plug and play. Like it was just drop me in and then just pop some head.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. So, what were the kind of the main differences then? You said a lot of the ways that they were kind of looking at the game were similar. What was the main difference that stood out to you that
Well,
kind of
I think
signified the jump that you made?
well, for one thing, I felt like it was like on Carpe Noctem, like since we're not as experienced as like people that are going to be playing at like the highest level, there's going to be a lot more like smaller mistakes that that might happen in rounds. But with like Sonics, I felt like it was very like you just don't see like those level of mistakes. That's all.
Cool. All right, so this is something I'm really curious about. Do you feel like you had a breakout moment? Because obviously, for me it was the match that I casted when it was you guys versus Most Prolific in the September Gauntlet. You had like a kind of middling map one, and then map two and map three, you just started popping like like I've never seen before. I think you finished that icebox like 27 or 29 and 8 on Arena. It was something else. I don't know if it felt like you kind of just like kicking the door down and like announcing yourself as JSUNG to everyone. To me it did, but obviously a very skewed perspective. So, what was it from your end? Was it before your time on Sonics? Was it on Sonics? What was it for you?
Um, for me, I don't really see it as like I guess you could call like this like kind of like a honeymoon phase, perhaps. Like
Mm-hmm.
someone that just like performs like super well and then all of a sudden like they fall off. But for me, I've never really been one to like think too much about like oh like I never want to get too caught up on like the past or on like results and stuff because for me it's really just about living in the moment and really just having fun and just enjoying like each moment that comes and just trying my best because like at the end of the day like I just want to put on a good show for everybody to watch, because people are watching the game, and I just want to show that I'm competent, and it's gonna be a good match.
Yeah, competent might be putting it lightly. You could definitely put on a good show, man.
I've always been like kind of approaching that the same way. Like while on Carpe Noctem, like while standing in for Sonics, like for me, just go out, play your game, have fun, and just enjoy the moment.
Yeah, like what you're talking about, kind of like alluding to being present and just trying to stay in the moment, not get so caught up in it. I think that's a mentality that a lot of people struggle to get to. So, is that something that you just had in yourself as a kind of a personality trait? Is just something that you were kind of brought up on? Uh, how did you kind of get to that place where you weren't getting caught up in the moment? Because I think for a lot of people, when it gets to be kind of that squeaky bum time, they clench up a little bit and they start to kind of stray away from their habits just because they're overthinking. How did you kind of how have you learned to let that go a little bit?
I think for me, um, I don't know. Like it's actually kind of hard to say because I think for everybody, it's gonna be a little bit different because everybody's a different person at the end of the day. So I can't say like what happened to me might happen to them. But for me, like I felt like it just like at one point things just started clicking and then like boom 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 like it just like things just start happening and like maybe I just also mentally feel like in a better place than I did like maybe in the past or something.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the esports scene in general are kind of realizing how important having a balanced and kind of like healthy life outside of game can improve a competitor's performance, you know? Like we've seen
Yeah.
so many teams at the highest level, investing in physical trainers and getting a chef for their boot camps and all this stuff, or getting a sports psychologist. So it's good to hear that you're kind of, doing what you can to try to stay in that good place. I know it's especially with everything that's happened since COVID kind of came onto the scene. It's been an extra challenge to try to stay positive and to kind of stay in a good headspace. So good on you for being able to do that. One of the things that this kind of leads me to is, so you've been involved since the Biotic Rain era. Early on, you were playing in the beta, you said, and just looking through your past teams, it's clear you've kind of teamed with specific people and kind of made some connections throughout the scene. How has that been for you? Because the tier 2, tier 3 scene seems to be pretty tight knit and for the most part supportive kind of group. What has it been like kind of coming up in that scene and getting to know people, and have you made any, relationships that kind of surprised you, or is there anything about that kind of group of players that has surprised you so far?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that connections in general are always going to be an important part in life because like you never know, like maybe the person that you talk to one day will end up being your teammate the next, or perhaps they'll be getting you on a team with them, right? So connections in general are great. They're very important and stuff. But I guess for me, I actually didn't have as many connections as like people think, but I would say like I've had like a lot of teammates that have also found their own individual like success. I guess with like headshot percentage, I had Josh RT as a teammate who ends up becoming the NRG head coach, and then I have Exalt who ends up going to Knights.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, a lot of different tier 2 players you can just kind of go through their match history and see their teammates, and you're like, oh, that motherfucker's on, Knights. That guy's on this team, and just kind of go through and be like, this is actually crazy because it's some random pickup squad that only played like in January and February. You never heard their name. You know what I mean? Before, yeah, it's really cool. One of the other things that I wanted to kind of ask you about, and you talked a little bit about really focusing on your mechanics and your improvement. And one thing that I think a lot of people are always searching to learn more about is improvement. Like, obviously, you must be a very different player now than you were when you started kind of taking the game more seriously. What is the kind of main theme of your, training that you've done for yourself that you think has carried you to this point?
Um, like as like funny as it sounds, like it was actually just kind of uh, like living in the moment, like with Carpe Noctem, we never actually got onto like top 50 VLR right away. So we never actually had the luxury of actually having any like good scrims, I guess, because we were basically just going in these tournaments like pretty dry with like scrims against like diamond players at the time, and then we would just be calling like mid-round adaptation on the things that we've seen and we've experienced, and then we just try to come up with ideas and solutions for them like on the fly,
That's awesome,
even
man.
in tournaments. Yeah.
That's that's insane. You guys were scrimming against diamond players. It was that rough out there, huh?
It was really rough, I will not lie.
Oof. You guys are in those like Discord servers just like thirsting for a scrim.
Yeah. We are just like some form of practice.
God damn. That's something else. All right, so before I let you go, I want to ask you one more thing. You tweeted out the GIF. Can you give us a little tease on at least when we'll get the news about not just who is JSUNG, but where is JSUNG going or potentially staying?
Um, I can't say much, but hopefully, it's in maybe a week or two. I'd give it like a week or two, maybe like minimum like 2 weeks.
All right,
You
man.
never know, but I've got another YouTube video ready. It's gonna be probably my best one. I hope.
What's the YouTube? Plug the YouTube channel.
It's just JSUNG, same username. You'll see some of my highlights.
All
I
right, there
guess
we go.
my most popping video being "Who is JSUNG?"
And then for those who don't know, it's JSUNG V1 on Twitter too. Give the man a follow. Um, dude, thanks so much for taking the time. Before I let you go and stop the recording, I did just want to ask, is there anything that you kind of want to say now that we're just kind of having this conversation? I'll be posting the conversation. Anything that you kind of see in the community that you think you want to just mention, something like a problem that you see that you wish people would kind of focus on, or any sort of like general message to the people who might be listening to this, to your peers and to people who might be kind of hoping to follow your path and to improve in the game and eventually get a shot.
Sure, sure. I've always stuck by these like words. Like if there's anything that I always like remember that always pops in my head, that's a reoccurring theme or a message. I've always told myself, just put in the work and the attitude, and you'll get there. And I really think that's just a message that goes with anything really. Like it could be games, it could be whatever hobby, any occupation that you're looking forward to doing. Like as long as you put in the work and the attitude, it'll come.
I love it.
Nothing else matters. Don't have to worry about anything else. Just focus on that.
All right. Well, Jay Sung, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was a pleasure to be able to kind of have a chat with you, and everybody go follow his Twitter. It's JSUNG V1, and we're looking forward to the announcement, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, dude.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please type "I believe in JSUNG supremacy" in the comments below. If you guys have any other feedback, seriously, I really do appreciate it. This is the first time I'm doing something like this in the Valorant scene. If there are topics that you think I could have covered and didn't, please let me know. Anything constructive helps.